And so ends yet another interesting week of Overwatch League action, with Stage 3's second week concluding last night on the back of 4 curious series that have at least given us a clearer idea as where the teams stand in the overall balance of power. As a quick reminder, my weekly power rankings will be up tomorrow. That said, let's get straight into my review of the action before seeing how I did for my predictions. Sunday's first match again brought us the game of the week, which had plenty of build-up and anticipation, as the San Francisco Shock, reeling from their upset loss to Houston, looked for vengeance as they faced the red-hot Seoul Dynasty, who themselves had started this stage very strongly. The series itself was kind of bizarre and didn't exactly play out as anyone expected. During their defeat to the Outlaws, everyone identified that whilst they dominated the Rhine Goats mirror, the Shock severely struggled against their opponent's use of Sombra Goats and Triple DVS comps. Therefore, the expectation was that Seoul would run their roster that included Michelle and employ a similar strategy to Houston, utilising his devastating skill on Sombra. Yet as the teams took to the stage, it was extremely interesting to note that the Dynasty came out with exactly the same lineup that defeated Atlanta earlier this week, and therefore Michelle was on the bench. This meant that heading into Nepal, they opted into the Rhine mirror, and after being completely shut out on the first round, it looked like this decision was a mistake. The next 2 rounds were much more competitive, with Seoul taking advantage of the Shock being weaker on Winston Goats to take Sanctum. Then they fell short on Village, giving San Francisco the first map of the series. They put up a strong performance, but simply, Super was getting the better of Marvel in the Rhine duel, and the Shock as a whole getting far more value out of their patient support ult usage compared to the Dynasty. Unsurprisingly, since compositions didn't change into Volskaya, the Shock's attack told a similar story, as despite tripping up a little bit after Sinatra's over-aggression, they got sold to waste their support ults early before finishing the map on the back of a huge shatter from Super. Finishing with just under 5 minutes in the timeback, it was a fast attack from San Francisco, but it didn't matter, as the Dynasty were terrible on their own attack, again playing the mirror, as they were full held in the most one-sided map of the affair, giving the Shock a 2-0 lead at the half. You could see that Seoul weren't playing terribly, and were finding some moments of success, but they never seriously looked like winning the Rhine 3-3 mirror throughout, so it was just baffling that they kept opting into it without even attempting to try and utilise the potential weaknesses on the side of the Shock. Lo and behold, they returned with their other roster, with the exception of Jaehong on Numbani, in what ended up being the closest map of the entire match. They held San Francisco at point A for almost 3 minutes with an interesting defence, with Fletters Farah and Fitz Sombra, which initially found success, but then after losing the point, the Dynasty then switched on to a weird Sombra Goats variant, which kept Fitz on Sombra, and Michelle on Diva at first, before then later switching to Zarya. I wouldn't be able to say why they decided to keep it this way, perhaps because of the ult charge on Fitz's Sombra, but it just didn't work, with Fitz not playing brilliantly, as the Shock rolled through the rest of the map. In reply, they finally came out on a more familiar triple DPS comp, with Michelle finally playing Sombra, and to everyone's surprise, they took the first point with ease in one teamfight. The rest of their attack ebbed back and forth, as they finished in a slower time, largely down to a very poor cleanup, as San Francisco stalled the payload. It therefore came down to one last attack for Seoul, and in keeping with how indecisive they were being throughout the series, they literally spent the first 30 seconds of their 1 minute deciding on a composition to run, which shockingly ended up being rushed and failed, thus guaranteeing they'd lose the series. Their attempt to hang on for a consolation draw was solid, aside from Fitz, who again on Sombra just seemed to make little to no impact, as through an EMP of their own, the Shock finally ended up winning the map. Havana concluded the series, with most of the time being spent with the team spawn camping one another in the Rhine mirror, where Fisher found far more success than Marvel had. Both teams completed the first section with just over a minute left, but during the second section, the Dynasty was simply outclassed, getting stopped with a distance that was easily matched by the Shock, giving them the 4-0 series win. And for San Francisco, this was an important result that was desperately needed after a couple of worrying matches, but questions still remain unanswered about their ability to play against Sombra Goats and Triple DPS comps. But as for Seoul, I'll start by saying that despite the scoreline, they actually had a very good series on the whole, and I reckon they should still go on to pick up 5 or 6 wins this stage. But once again, coaching decisions just leave me confused. It just didn't look like at any point that the Dynasty were committed to running alternatives to the Mirror 3-3 fully. Yes, they fiddled around with it on Numbani, but that felt very reactionary and almost desperate, especially given the unexplainable decision to run Fitz over Michelle on Sombra, and how perplexed they looked on their second attack. Ultimately, this series will remain a cause of what if for Seoul, had they truly tested the Shock on other maps whilst running triple DPS and Sombra Goats comps that found far more success, when used, than running into the Mirror 3-3 Rhine Goats. So I am concerned that yet again it'll be the macro play and coaching decisions that hold back this team's potential that we all know they clearly have. It's fair to say that after a slightly underwhelming match of the week, the second week in a row this has now happened. Few had many expectations for the series that followed, pitting the Florida Mayhem against the Paris Eternal, would be an entertaining match. Whilst the series did end up being quite competitive, it was mainly for the wrong reasons, as upon reflection, the overall level of play was poor, with both sides playing very sloppily, with incredibly poor ultimate usage at the heart of when teams found their success and failure. Map 1 on Nepal was the most one-sided event, with Paris steamrolling Florida, on first Shrine, and then Village, even bringing out their signature Maygoat setup that gave the Eternal the quick lead in the series. Next, heading on to Horizon Lunar Colony, we witnessed 3 snowball attacks in a row, as both teams quickly and easily took point A, and then B not long after, with Paris doing this twice, as the Mayhem did this on their first attack as well. They almost managed to do this on their second attack as well, but following BQB's Grav being eaten and a couple of deaths, they were stalled, only finishing in overtime, which allowed Paris to easily come back on their last attack and grab the first tick of point A for the map victory and a 2-0 lead in the series. On Numbani, the Eternal looked to flex onto a quad DPS comp, but they ended up botching to a disciplined GOATS defense from Florida, led by the great Winston display from Fate. In reply, the Mayhem showed how it was done, with their own quad DPS that was much more effectively run, with BQB, Sire Player, and Fate picking up the necessary kills thanks to Zephyr Poke on Pharah, to capture their needed percentage and actually pick up a map in the series. They even, thanks to Fate's Reinhardt and BQB on Sombra, started out well on Havana, making it all the way to the end of the map before being stopped. Alas, their defence was not well run at all, getting picked apart from Benbest's own Reinhardt as Paris reached their target in good time to bring a close to this affair 3-1 in the Eternals' favour, which unconvincingly continues their impressive start to the stage, as Florida at least showed some potential and fight with their own performance. Our last hope of a really exciting match came during the third match of the day, with two sides desperate for a result, taking on one another after poor runs of form lately, as the Philadelphia Fusion played the Boston Uprising. We could tell we were in for a treat, as on Ilios, Philly came out on a traditional 3-3 to face a Hackfist Sombra Doomfist comp from Boston, which ended up flipping the point multiple times in a really close affair. The main difference that separated the two teams was their ultimate usage, with Blase and RCK just finding far more value overall, giving their side the edge to take the first map. The second map, Paris, saw both teams largely opt into multiple DPS and bunker comps, and with them they found plenty of success, both completing the map twice thanks to the Sombra play of RCK on the side of the Uprising and the Genji play from EQO from the side of the Fusion. In the end though, both teams with very little time bank available to them just couldn't capture any percentage on point A on their third attacks and thus had to settle for a draw in the end. After the break returning on Hollywood, it was interesting to see the two teams mirror one another using Sombra codes, and surprisingly, it was Philly who looked the better side, eventually managing to hold the first point after Carpe hit a massive EMP in overtime. It just looked like the more Boston played 3-3 style comps, the more comfortable the Fusion were against them, as they quickly picked up a number of early kills on their own attack, and as Carpe picked up the finishing blows on Zarya, they won the map, levelling the series and taking us to a deciding fourth map on Gibraltar. Running GOATS again, the Uprising weren't particularly great and ended up being stopped before the end of the first section, with Sado on his more familiar Winston making some solid plays as he did at other stages throughout the series. With such a makeable target and Philly winning the 3-3 mirror, it was only a matter of time before they break through on their own attack to win the map and thus the series 2-1. For Philly, it at least stabilises their poor run of form for now, with a result they need to look to build upon. Whereas for Boston, despite defeat, they look far improved and competitive, and potentially want to explore running more Sombra comps rather than traditional 3-3 moving forward. When looking at this week's schedule, seeing that the final game on Sunday was between the Washington Justice and LA Gladiators was unfortunate, with the outcome being very predictable. I don't think I need to spend too much time on the series, as it followed an extremely regular pattern. Washington first on control, and then defensively throughout the series, gave the Gladiators some troubles at times, with the team continuing to improve and progress to a point that in these situations they can be competitive. However, given their coordination issues when it comes to having to be the team taking the initiative and engaging, they're still a long way off, with Janus typically not on the same wavelength for the rest of his team, as they go on to waste ultimas, with Ark in particular suffering in a sound barrier fluff slump. Justice were full held on every map, except on Havana, where they did manage to at least pick up one checkpoint. And to their credit, I thought Sansam was a standout player, with some nice all-round play on Diva, but for the team it's still slow progress. For the Gladiators, it was a simple enough 4-0 win, perhaps a few questions needed to be asked for the Numbani attack. That aside, it was a disciplined performance, and the only other comment I'll make will be on Shaz's hat, which I thought looked great, and should be a trend for other players moving forward. Overall, it was another strong day of predictions on the whole, as I finished the week getting 3 out of the 4 matches on Sunday correct, to take my weekly record to 13-3, which sees some improvement from last week's 12-4 record, bringing my Stage 3 record overall to 25-7, which I think might be the same as Stage 2, which makes for a promising start. Of course, it should be obvious that I missed on the Soul vs Shock series, but I had anticipated we'd see a lot of Michelle Sombra. We saw how that turned out. That series aside, the rest of the matches went pretty much how I expected, perfectly scoring both Paris's and the Gladiators' victories, whilst I was impressed with Boston's overall performance in a tighter series against Philly. And with that, we've reached the end of my Stage 3, Week 2, Day 4 review, and I'd like to thank you for watching. I'm uploading my power rankings tomorrow, followed by my Q&A on Wednesday, so to ensure you don't miss out, please like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter for this continuing Overwatch League coverage and content, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.